In our journey to where we arrived at modern times, our species obviously developed technology. We shared the use of tools with our other primate cousins, most notably the higher apes and even some of the monkeys, where they fashion tools from twigs, from even use stones to crack nuts, etc. Now, we're going to look in this series, which I'm going to do whenever there is nothing really exciting to talk about. Do a series explaining all the different technological complexes that our ancestors and developed. So we're going to start at the very beginning. Around 2.5 million years ago, the first tools were beginning to appear, the first stone tools, in fact, because I'm sure that there were before that our ancestors were using tools made from other materials such as wood or bone or etc., or even stones that were naturally sharpened, etc. So we're going to start off with this article, which I found in searching oh, sorry about that, guys. My mistake. Where is it? Share. There we go. This is from the tool set the site of Bradshaw Foundation, the Origins Center from the Center of Advanced Study of Hominid Paleobiology. Now, the first tools are called the Oldowan stone tools, and they was first coined by Louis Leakey. Louis Leakey is the founder, the finder, the archaeologist, anthropologist that found Lucy, Australopithecine afarensis in Tanzania. When he's been digging around that area for a long time, he first coined this term in 1936, and the Oldowan is a term used to describe the earliest evidence of the human fossil record. So it begins around 2.5 million years ago, and it's restricted to Africa. Now, the Oldowan industry can still be found in the form of similar flake tools in hunter-gatherer societies across the world. It's similar, but it's not the same, even though they use the same techniques, which I'll describe in a little bit, and they are similar. They are not the same, so just bear in mind that. Even if it has been largely replaced by more advanced technologies. Now, Leakey named this archaeological culture after the first area in which he documented it, the now famous site of Oldowan Gorge in Tanzania, Africa. If you guys see these are the quite from who's the book that they're citation, Schick and Toth 2006, etc. So these are citations. The work is notably recognized as the first instance of tool making in human history. It separated the Oldowan from the later Acheulean and gave the description to these earliest artifacts. Now, so I'll talk about Acheuleans next, because that's the technology that comes after this. So, what is the Oldowan technology? Well, it represents the first instance of technological innovation in human history, where our ancestors first began to enhance their biological abilities, and with the manufacturing of stone tools. This is very, very important. Up until now, most likely, our ancestors and our cousins, the Australopithecines, the Paranthropus, they may have been using tools. For example, they may have been using, like the chimpanzees use now, wooden tools for termite fishing, for defensive against big cats, because our ancestors were prey to the big cats, lions, tigers, cheetahs, and hyenas, which aren't cats, of course, but They were the predators of the time, even though the dogs, of Africa, the African dog, our wild dog, and they would have been possibly used tools to defensive and also to procure food easily, like I said, termite fishing, for instance. Now, at some point in time, our cousins, our ancestors, began to consume meat, most likely from scavenged what other animals it kills, much like hyenas do, and vultures, and etc. And but they would have gone to find that these remains were very pittance, because they would have been the last to get hold of the carcass. So they possibly developed these. I'm slightly getting ahead of myself, but it's good to explain why the tools would have been the motivation behind producing tools and using tools. Now, since they were possibly the last rung of the ladder in access to the carcass, there would have been only big bones left and a few other things. But bones themselves can be very nutritious if you can get to the marrow. In fact, the marrow is mostly fat. It has a lot of energy, so I'm sure that these ancestral species, the Paranthropus, the Australopithecines, and even possibly our genus, the beginning of our genus Homo, would have used stones to crack open the bones to get to the marrow. And that's possibly the motivation behind using them. But they may have started to use simple stones, but they've possibly found that, who knows, by accident, what, take a few flakes off, make a cutting edge, and you get more efficient way of cracking the bone. Instead of a couple of hits, maybe one or two would have been enough to crack open the bone. Now let's describe what this complex techno-complex is, as this article says down here. This techno-complex is characterized by a limited variety of simple artifacts such as flakes, hammerstones, and cores, with very little, if any, evidence of retouching. Right, I have a little slideshow which I'll link to now. Here we go. Now this is possibly, I haven't said which species developed these technologies yet, but I tend to think that this one is H. habilis, Homo habilis. This is obviously an artistic rendition of what it could have done. You see him holding the hammerstone. That's what is used to strike and remove cores from the tool itself. Now, this is what an Oldowan hammer or core or axe or whatever you want to call it, a tool looks like. It's from a pebble, usually a pebble that'll fit in your hand or fit in the hominin's hand, and a couple of flakes were removed. You can see them here. There is one here, if you guys can see my cursor. I think you can. There's 1, 2, 3. There's 4. Four flakes were removed from this this tool. They always have. We always know where they were hit from, because it leaves a bulb of percussion. If you guys, I don't know if you guys can see my my cursor, because it's a bit light and etc. But it is the top part. You can see it's shape of a sort of a bulb, and it has the crack in the middle. And you can see that, if you can see that this coloring, it's the purplish. Oh yes, you can. You can see it. Good. You can see my cursor. It's this area here, which this purple area on the right-hand side, left-hand side of the left-hand side flake that was removed. The purplish area is the percussion bulb. Now that's one of the simplest ones. This was very efficient. It had a blade. It had a cutting edge, which could be used to even scrape some of the little remaining meat and gristle that was left from bones. And also has several points, as you guys can see, which were used to crack open bones. Here's how it would possibly held. This is obviously a modern human hand, but the abilis and even Australopithecine afarensis and africanus, and even some of the Paranthropus, the robust Australopithecines, which are called Paranthropus now, would have had quite gracile hands, very dexterous hands. And this tool has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 flakes were removed from it. And then you can see the lower part here would have been the part that was used to crack open the bone. And this part here, between them, would have been used to scrape, especially this one here. This one could have been used to scrape bones or etc. A possible, just 2 more slides to go, a possible scenery, an artistic rendition of a scenery. You have elephants in the background. You see them using fire, which is wrong. They did not use fire yet, and there's no evidence that they harnessed fire or even took advantage of fire. So this is very, very wrong. But I have one that is much better, which is this one. This one is completely plausible. This scene here is completely plausible. A rhinoceros, a dead rhinoceros, possibly of old age, or possibly, who knows, he died. The scavengers came first, most notably the hyenas, lions as well. Then you have the vultures in the background, and then at the last instant, you have Homo habilis. The ones that are scaring off the vultures are artistic license. Didn't really happen, and you can see them cracking open the bones while some of them producing the tools. This is a very, very likely scenario, and I have to. I'm going to name the source. This came from. I have the links. The third link in the description is dkfindout.com. It is quite good for education as children. It's quite good. So I'm going. It's copyright of theirs, of course, and use this hopefully in fair use. And we finish this presentation. Now let's get back to this article here. Right, the first instances of the Oldowan tool technology crop up in East Africa around 2.5 million years ago. They were following the period of global climate cooling and drying. So in the north of the Eurasian continent, this is Africa, but in the north of the Eurasian continent, there were beginning to occur glacial periods, which dried, made the world climate cooler, and it also dried out the climate because the ice, the glaciers and the ice sheets drew out moisture from the atmosphere. So it would have been much drier, obviously. As a result, the African geography had changed quite a bit, with grasslands becoming predominant. Interesting changes were also happening to the several branches of the human lineage alive at the time. There were more than one hominins at that time, and there were the robust and the gracile Australopithecines, and even now genus Homo. The candidates, because there's a speculation of who used and who developed this technology, because these are the candidates that they think: the gracile Australopithecines, which is Australopithecus afarensis and Australopithecus gari, and then you have the robust Paranthropus ethiopticus and Paranthropus bosei. You can see on the left-hand side the skull of Paranthropus bosei. They were very, very big. They were about 1.8 meters tall, and they had massive jaws and massive teeth. They were called the Nutcracker Man. Because of the teeth that they had. So this time period was also the recognizable at the beginnings and diversification of our genus. with Homo habilis and Homo rudolfensis. Homo habilis 2 to 1.6 million years ago, rudolfensis 3.4 to 1.7 million years ago. And you also have Homo ergaster, Homo erectus, which most likely evolved either from habilis or rudolfensis, because he came later, ergaster and erectus. The ergaster would have been possibly the intermediate between either rudolfensis and habilis. We don't know where we came from, because there are now two different homos at that time. Our hominins, our lineage, our genus. There were two examples of our genus at that time, habilis and rudolfensis. More or less, they were contemporary. And ergaster will possibly, I don't know yet, because no one really knows yet. There would have been the would have been evolved. One of them, of the either habilis or rudolfensis, evolved to ergaster, which evolved to erectus. That's how more or less it's sort of. It seems that way. We just don't know it exactly. It's not yet established, so there's still a lot of speculation, because there's just not enough fossils in the found yet. What is interesting is that Australopithecus africanus, the southern ape southern example of the Australopithecines, they were all dated to this period. Africanus is later, and nearby the same period as the nearby Oldowan sites. Unfortunately, few fossil remains are directly associated with the Oldowan technology. We don't know who produced them, because we haven't found any in association. And in fact, in one instance, in the Oldowan Gorge site, FLK, they found that Bosei, Paranthropus bosei, the one and this big guy, and habilis with direct association with stone tools. And then even some other mammals were found in direct association with the Oldowan technology. A specimen of early Homo, STS 553 from South Africa, exhibited a cut mark that could have been from a stone tool. We don't know. It appears to be that way. So early Homo, although whether early Homo made the cuts remains yet another uncertainty. We don't know. There's instances of even these distances of direct association can be difficult to decipher, and because there's just not enough, we just haven't found enough samples. We have a lot of erectus, a lot of even ergaster. We have a lot of erectus from all over the world. We have a lot of Heidelbergensis or Antecessor, and the same amount of Neanderthals and etc. Not Denisovan yet, but who knows? Maybe the finds that they have found in China and near Far East that date to around 300-ish thousand, 200,000-ish, could be Denisovans. I really would like them to be, but that's just wishful thinking. So they found that this, after having worked with FLK, it was Mary Leakey who proposed Homo habilis as the responsible for the tools, but rather than Paranthropus bosei. But there also is still a popular hypothesis in current paleoanthropology. Other researchers such as Sussman, I know who he is, I read him, suggested that it was the robust Australopithecines that were more likely to produce the Oldowan tools out of necessity. Very simple, the robust Australopithecines, Bosei, Aethiopticus, needed them to grind up the coarse plant material that they ate, similar to gorillas. But I find that a little bit, well, personally, they would have been not contemporary. They were contemporary with gorillas, obviously, because gorillas have been more or less stable as as a species for longer than Bozai was alive, etc., even longer than our genus. And the gorillas eat. If we use comparative archaeology, comparative biology, gorillas eat plants. Chimpanzees eat plants, and well, more so than chimpanzees. In fact, gorillas are totally vegetarian. The plant eaters, and they eat coarse. Obviously, some might call more coarse than others, but it's still plant is still a hard food stuff to digest, because the silica in the plant cells make it very extremely hard to digest. You need certain bacteria, or you need more than one stomachs, or you need to regurgitate and rechew your food, the material, etc. It's very hard. So using them to possibly crush the food stuff is a plausible theory, plausible hypothesis. Of course, it's plausible. They can test it, and so on. But it's still only a plausible hypothesis. It hasn't been completely settled yet. So he also gives the assertion that Paranthropus' hand morphology was adapted to precision grasping. Yes, and given the contemporary nature of the hominin species at the time, it is possible that any one of up to all of them had some part to play in the shaping of the old one. See, that's another thing. Yes, all of those that I just mentioned, Garia forensis, not Africanus, Garia forensis, Ethiopticus, Boisei, Abilis, and Rudolfensis, all of them could have used stone tools and made stone tools. That's a hypothesis, and it's valid, because they were contemporary one of another. We still haven't separated them, and in spite of the possibilities, it's known that only one genus survived past 1 million years ago. Us, Homo. So maybe they did, because they just outsurvived. Their brains were slightly larger than the others in the other species. So now, in addition, it could have made in the question of Oldowan's functionality also remains largely unknown. The problem contributes to the large debate of the nature of early human meat acquisitions. Like I just mentioned, I won't read that because that's basically what I told you guys before, what the Oldowan, the motivation behind developing these stone tools. Was it hunting? I doubt it was hunting. It was most definitely scavenge, but we can't be for sure. We don't know. And until we get the falsifiable evidence that it was hunting or not, then we can't assert without proof. So there's no proof that they hunted or scavenged or scavenged. So we can hypothesize. So the tools, of course, are determined by the experimental functional studies have gone a long way in the description of functional features. This boils down to whether hominins had primary access or secondary access with the scavenging. Primary access, if they hunted, they would have gotten the choice meats, but then they would have needed to develop sharper cutting tools to get them quicker, while a more robust Oldowan technology would have been more readily suited for the secondary access, the scavenging of the carcass, and deals with requirements of each scenario. Dominguez Rodrigo, etc., argued that the mode of meat acquisitions would not necessarily require a kind of processing that secondary access would, wherein the marrow inside the bone would represent the best value resources. That's what I told you guys. So therefore, the bones with percussive damage and fracturing would more likely attributed to a secondary access. This particular debate has not yet been resolved. Of course not. There's just not enough samples, not enough fossils. There's not enough material. Then there's this contributing to this problem are speculations that our cousins, the chimpanzees, could have produced these materials as well. That throws another spanner into the already broken works. No, they're not broken. They're just exciting, in fact. Because chimpanzees have been observed to make and use tools for a number of tasks. I said that, but they're mainly wooden tools, like I just said before. If they use stone tools, they don't fashion them. They just grab a rock and crack open nuts. So that's a possibility again. In chimpanzee tool making, however, their chosen material are often organic. So it answers it, like I said. Now, these tools include items such as long striped sticks used for termite fishing. Thought I'd do that. In addition, chimpanzees also use stone tools, often in the form of hammers and anvils for cracking nuts. So we can skip that part because the African apes, like the bonobos, have been trained to successfully produce Oldowan-like tools, but less skillful. So you can train them, but that's training them. We are instilling in them a culture that they did not develop by themselves. But they did develop the termite fishing and the nut cracking ability by themselves. So this is, I will discard this. It's a possibility. It's a hypothesis. It's there. It can happen. It's within the realms of the possibility, but it's artificially induced. So the pre-Oldowan is a term given to tools older than 2 million years ago at sites like Ghana, Ethiopia, West Turkana, Kenya, which seem to exhibit less skill than we expect to the traditional Oldowan. So instead of 4 or 5 flags, maybe they cracked it open against a hammer against a thing to produce one cutting edge or one sharpened area to get to the marrow, like I said, the secondary access of the carcass of the meat source. Bori also showed evidence of the raw material. They selected raw materials, but they preferred felsic volcanic rocks as opposed to mafic basaltic common in the Oldowan Kubafora Gorge. That Oldowan technology, they preferred stones that chipped in the way that produced quite sharp cutting edges, and they were quite crystalline, small crystals, etc. This clearly indicates the hominid preference for fine-grained and phenocrastic poor rocks, more suitable for flaking, as well as the ability to plan ahead for future tool productions. They were eating more. This is a chicken and the egg, but we know that technically the egg came first because of the dinosaurs, etc., and then fish, etc., before that. But did the meat? It not did. We know that the meat diet that they were engaging in, these individual the habilis, rudolfensis, possibly afarensis and africanus, the Australopithecines, and the habilis and rudolfensis, their brains began to grow faster because they were getting much more energy from the meat, from the fat that they were obtaining from the animals that they possibly scavenged. Then they could plan ahead. Obviously, their cognitive functions would have been greatly increased. So we were, in conclusion now, because the rest of it just basically concluding, this is the first stone tool industry. That's what it's called. It's a technological complex. The Oldowan tool complex is the first one that we recognize on Earth, basically humankind. It's most likely attributed to Homo habilis, and they used it most likely as a secondary source or scavenging of carcasses left by other animal kills. And this technology led to The next one, which I'll talk about in next time, the Acheulean stone tools, which came next, and which were also introduced to us to introducing another species, which is erectus. There's an intermediate phase. Just to finish off, there's an intermediate phase between erectus and habilis, and that would most likely be filled with Augusta. And you can see that they were possibly using the earliest forms of Acheulean. So I ended here, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. It's a sort of a lesson plan that I've been trying to develop, and we will be here next time for another one. If there's nothing appears that's interesting, I'll do the next lesson. If something is interesting, I won't do it. I'll hold it up to the next, because we got plenty of time, and it's nice filler sort of lessons. So good night, everyone, and I hope you all have a good day, night, wherever your part of the world is. Bye-bye.